Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Ian. This is Ian Gamesmith, and I have a very exciting beginning of a new series tonight. Kicking off the series Games by Design, where we play games with the game designers, either running it or playing along with us. I'm really excited to have our very first one be featuring Tracy Barnett tonight with their recently released Iron Edda Accelerated. So you're going to be seeing some epic Norse fantasy featuring bone mechs and all kinds of nonsense. We'll be doing character creation and holdfast creation, which is like a collaborative neighborhood building element tonight. And then just to get the campaign rolling a little bit, and then we'll have two more sessions going forward the next 2 weeks. So really excited about that. We have Adira Slattery is on her way. She'll be just a touch late, so we'll integrate her when she gets in. It'll probably make my camera just go screwy for a second. And hey, don't hesitate to shout out any technical issues in chat. Last week I had a lot of dropped frames and everything was fine on my end, but when I rebooted the stream, everything smoothed out. So if things go wonky, feel free to let me know. Thanks everybody so much for showing up in chat. I appreciate it. It's always nice to have a strong start. So would you guys like to introduce yourselves? Tracy, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to, and where we can find you on the internet.
Sure. So my name is Tracy Barnett. As Ian said, I am the creator of Iron Edda Accelerated, which is published by Encoded Designs, and it just came out for public release 2 days ago. So this is awesome to be able to have a chance to run it for folks here on Ian's channel. And Iron Edda Accelerated, here's the elevator pitch. So Ragnarok happened in the form of 50-foot tall metal dwarven destroyers rising out of the ground. And humanity said, oh gods, what do we do? And Loki said, hey, I have this thing that I totally didn't steal from the dwarves that will let you take the spirits of your bravest warriors and bond them to the bones of dead giants, and y'all can Pacific Rim this shit.
Yeah.
So that's the game we're going to play. And hi, Adira. We are live on Twitch already, just so you know.
Wow.
We just kicked. Yeah, it's okay. We just kicked off. Ian got me started doing introductions. And so I'm going to kick it over to Denicia to introduce herself.
And I will struggle to get Denicia on screen for her introduction. Let's see here.
It's all right. It's all good.
The joys of live Zoom chat manipulation. All right, Denicia, you are on screen. Go for it.
Am I? Yay! Hi there. I'm Denicia. You can find me on the Twitters as underscore Denicia underscore. That's DANICIA. My day job, I work for Catan Studio. I'm the community manager, organized play manager, and I also, for a hobby, run my own tabletop convention called OrcaCon, as you can see on my shirt. And I decided I've never played this game, but I know Tracy's been working on it for a long time. So when they said, hey, we should play sometime, and then I met Ian on the Twitters, and it was like perfect for me to get in here and play this. And I know nothing about Fate, so don't feel alone if you don't know anything about Fate.
Good old Twitters. Yeah, excellent. And Adira, you have fantastic timing. It's just in time for you to introduce yourself to the stream.
Woo! Awesome. So, hello. I'm Adira Slattery. I do a lot of different game stuff. I write some LARPs and things. I'm on the Woman with Hollow Eyes show for season 2 on the One Shot Network, and that's a lot of fun. We play Invisible Sun, and that game's pretty weird, and I like it. I like Fate. I like Pacific Rim. I like Vikings, so I am in for this.
Fantastic.
Please excuse me eating an orange while I take some hormones.
No worries. So just a couple of quick announcements. This Saturday, we have the sort of culmination of the other series I've been doing, 3-act play, where we have generated a world from scratch. Last week we did like setting and character creation and really fleshed out the little world we'll be playing in. And then this Saturday we have our one shot. And we have a guest GM, which is super exciting. We thought it was going to be one of the 4 of us, but Colin from Phantom Roll Booth offered to GM the setting that we wrote, which was a really kind of unexpected and fun thing to have come up. So that'll be Saturday, starting at noon Pacific time. And let's see here. I think so. We have this game in this slot, so 5:30 Pacific on Thursdays. Next week and the week after that as well, to play in the world that we're creating tonight. And so, without any further ado, I will kick it over to you, Tracy, and let's get this thing rolling.
Okay, so the first thing that we are going to begin with is Holdfast creation. So the four of us are going to make the town, basically the collection of homes and people that we will be playing this game in. So Ian, if you could have the slide 1 up on the center panel, that will let the audience see the space that will be the map that we're going to draw on to create the Holdfast. And to do the Holdfast creation, you need to have 2 fate dice handy. Ta-da, fate dice. And since Ian, you are the very kind and generous host of this channel, would you like to kick us off by answering the first question?
Oh, sure, I'd love to.
Okay, then what I need you to do is to roll 2 fate dice, and don't total them up the way you normally would. Just read the face results.
Sure thing. I got a minus and a minus. That's
a minus and a minus. Okay,
fortuitous.
So what that does is it establishes the sort of top level category of questions that we're going to be asking. If you're following along in the PDF, it's on page 18, where we're going, and the category is Curse of the Gods.
Yeah,
so very fortuitous.
Good start.
Yeah. Next, go ahead and roll one die.
Okay, that's a plus.
Okay, so that means that the question you get is going to have to do with the future. And then roll 2 more dice.
I got minus and minus again.
Okay.
We're doomed.
Sweet doom.
So here is your question. The priests say that Hell's curse will fall upon your Holdfast, calling the dead to rise as Draugr. What needs to change to prevent this fate, and what stands in the way?
Wow.
So a quick Norse lesson for those who aren't familiar. Hel is the goddess of death. You saw her as Hela in Thor Ragnarok. And in traditional depictions, she is depicted as half of her body being completely dead. So she is a skeleton on one half and a beautiful woman on the other half. And Draugr are basically Norse zombies.
Yes. And so the question is, what needs to be done, prevent it, and what's preventing us from preventing it, basically?
Yep, basically, you've got it right.
All right. So I think that there was a pact made at the founding of the Holdfast that is going to be called Dew. That's what is going to cause our warriors to be called forth as Draugr.
Okay.
Dew?
What's that?
So there was some dark deal that was made at the founding of the Holdfast, and now that debt is being called in?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So Hell's Curse exists because of an old debt at Holdfast founding. So that's what's going to prevent things from being fixed, right? Is that this debt needs to be called in.
Yeah.
So that's the second part of the question. What is the first part of the question? What needs to be done to actually stop this?
So the debt needs to be resolved in some other way, because I feel like I get all your warriors if this doesn't happen before this time is kind of like the fail clause. So I think that there's some other service that we're meant to render for Hell.
Okay. Cool. I think it is interesting to leave the other service as of yet undiscovered, because that makes a lovely plot hook. I will extend this by asking one other question.
Sure.
Who is the person who struck this deal with Hell, and how long ago was the deal struck?
I think that, let's see here. I think it was the at the founding of the Holdfast, the man who would become the Jarl. I think it was his daughter that actually struck the pact.
Okay, and how long ago was that?
Well, let's keep it interesting. Let's say it was like 2 generations ago, so she's possibly still alive, but aged.
Wonderful. Okay, and a thing to keep in mind as we're creating these characters, just because we're naming people So, for example, the former Jarl's daughter, she exists in the setting now. It doesn't necessarily mean she's an NPC. So, if at any point in time we're naming someone and you're like, "Oh, that sounds like fun," you can be that person. Like, you can totally slot yourself into that role. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the next thing you need to do, Ian, is on that first slide, is you need to draw something on the map that represents your answer to that question. There are a bunch of lovely little shape icons you can pick next to the line tool. So you can just make a shape on the thing and it will let you insert text into that shape. So make something and then label it so we know what it is.
I think that the pact was sworn on the cornerstone of like the longhouse. So that's what this is the cornerstone, the centerpiece of this holdfast.
The keystone of the meat hall.
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect.
And I have caps lock on. Very cool.
Woo!
Does it need some other distinguishing feature?
Nope.
Or should we just call it that?
Yeah, the keystone the keystone is fantastic. And then the only other thing that I usually like to do, just because this is a finicky tool, is to center the text because it looks a little nicer. And then either shrink the font or widen it. So, and while we're doing this, if you want to play around with your shape, you can now shade it and color it and all kinds of fun stuff. So that moves us to our next question, and just simply moving left to right across the top of my video order, I see Denicia. So would you like to do the second question?
Sure.
Wonderful. So 2 dice, please.
All right. I got a plus and a minus.
Plus and a minus. Your category is sword talk, axe talk. And that is page 12 of the PDF. Roll 1 die, please.
All right. Oops, that would be a minus.
The past. Roll 2 more dice.
That would be a plus and a minus.
A plus and a minus. The fields are running red with blood from a number of recent battles. What important blood has been spilled? And why does it spell hard times for the holdfast?
I think that that accidentally one of the young children in training to be a skald was murdered. We didn't protect them.
Oh no.
And why does that spell hard times for the holdfast?
Probably because of our debt. Is that that this that our skalds kind of support our the pact that we've made for hell. So maybe we're not the most popular holdfast around, but a necessary one.
Okay, so describe how the skalds support that debt. Like, what does that mean to you?
Is that I think that it's kind of is that we see life and death a bit differently. Is that that we're more likely to help clean the battlefields and make sure that hell has a clear path for her to do her work, keep away predators or carrion, things like that, except the crows, because we would like to support that.
So basically the skalds uphold this tradition.
Right.
And someone killing a young skald is basically blaspheming in your holdfast. Is that accurate? Cool.
Yep.
So if you could then draw something on the map to represent your answer to that question. Perhaps the place where the skald was murdered, or if they have a location where they train, if there's a college of skalds, in or outside of our holdfast, that kind of thing would be cool.
Yeah. Come here. So this is where the Skald's Hearth is, where they do all their training and stuff.
Awesome.
So they're a little bit back farther because it's all the mysterious, mystical stuff.
Yeah.
And people are really, it's like, well, we believe in the gods, but we don't necessarily want to get too close to the gods.
Right. And as reference, everything on the map, the distances are relative, right? These are not hard and fast. The scale doesn't really matter. So that moves us to Adira. Adira, are you ready for your question?
Yes, but
Wonderful.
I realized I do not have dice with me, so give me just 1 second. They're in the other side of the room.
Okay.
Am I on microphone?
I now need a heavy metal cover of Girl from Ipanema. You can see with the game.
I'm ready.
Okay, wonderful. Roll 2 dice, please.
2 plus.
Plus. So that is hanging in the balance. That's page 11 of the PDF. Roll 1 die.
A plus.
A plus, that is the future. And roll 2 dice.
0 and a plus.
0 and a plus. Caravans from Brand are traveling across the whole of Midgard and will be at your Holdfast soon. What goods do the hooded traders bring? And why are people loath to trust them?
Interesting.
So think an Arabian-style caravan.
Yeah. I think that the sorts of goods that the traders are bringing is a number of weird and exotic metals and crafted goods and things like that. So very wicked looking knives and spears and then just a lot of weird glowing green metals and
So you can see the efficacy of them, but they give you the shivers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they definitely ping sort of the weirdness radar of okay, this looks like a sword that could kill somebody, but what else will it do?
Right. And so is it just the eerie nature of these things that has people off put?
I think it's probably a little bit more than that.
Okay.
They're eerie, but they're not eerie in a way that the people here understand. There's a lot of eerie things happening.
Yeah. So it's not eerie goes part and parcel when you're 7 years into Ragnarok, right?
Yeah.
A lot of strange shit happens.
Uh-huh.
This is something that is outside of even the understood ken of most people.
Yeah.
So your eyes want to slip off the sword and not quite look at it, or it always looks like you're looking at it from the same angle no matter what angle you're looking at it from. It's just I'm getting kind of a Lovecraftian vibe from these weapons. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah. It might even be that some people they look at the weapons and they just have to go vomit for a while. They just
jeez. It's intense.
Cool. So just for some transparency, I'm putting down in my notes, people don't trust the traders because of the non-Euclidean weapons they're attempting to sell.
Nice.
Okay, awesome. So on the map, draw something to represent your answer to that question. You could put trade road or
put a trade depot.
Okay. I love seeing the different shapes that people pick for things. It's always fun to me.
I'm gonna call it trading post.
Oh, Adira, you're an anonymous unicorn. How lovely.
Yeah. I'm going to move your text box real quick so I can resize it and it's not hanging off the edge of the page. Zoops.
Oh, and I think it has a little edge to it as well, right?
Ta-da.
There we go.
Wonderful. Okay, so then typically I like to start with 4 questions. And since we only have 3 players, I'm going to roll a question as well. And I will read it out and begin to answer it as if it's my question. But if you all have anything you want to contribute to it, you are more than welcome to, because this is sort of our final capstone question here. So 2 dice, and I get a plus and a blank, which is political maneuvers.
Nice.
Fun fact, I did a streamed game of this for the launch of the Kickstarter, and all 3 players chose to play seers. And
Nice.
Every single question that they rolled was the political maneuvers category in the present, and they all rolled 3 different questions.
Oh, man.
In fact, I rolled the same thing. So we had 4 different political maneuvers questions with a group of seers. It was amazing. For this, I also rolled present, as before, and 2 dice. So here's my question. I got a plus and a blank, or a plus and a minus. A delegation from Alfheim has arrived in the Holdfast. The elves offer support in the war against the Dwergar, but for a price. What do they want, and why is the Jarl reluctant to take the deal? So I'm gonna throw this open to everybody. Like,
yeah, feel free to chime in too if you have ideas. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So I know the chat is probably a tiny bit behind the stream, so I'll just say for the chat, what do the elves want in exchange for their help against the dwarves in this war? And now we need that heavy metal version of Girl from Ipanema again.
I'll have it queued up next week.
Honestly, if we all just try and sing it at the same time, I think that'll work. So
yeah, create the right kind of discordance.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and talk ideas amongst ourselves, and then I'll chime in with chat ones as they come in.
Yeah. So what do y'all think the elves want for their help? A popular response to this question is to plant a grove near the Holdfast.
Mm-hmm.
And
that would be interesting.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that a forest in and of itself is a strange thing, but an elven grove has an air of mystery about it. Oh, I just saw X I can't even pronounce that handle. X Leg Libertas suggested that the elves want the Holdfast to fulfill their obligation to Hell.
Fascinating.
Because if not, things go bad for everyone.
Yeah.
They kind of
they're sitting there with their spears going, come on, you guys do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I'm comfortable with that. Are you all good with that?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. They're like big tree golems, sort of menacing far away. Do the thing.
So Jordan's other thought that got pitched in the chat was the elves want the other half of the seals that were used to bind their first sleeping huntress mother.
Ooh.
I'm going to roll those ideas together, right? Cool. Because in the grand tradition of All My Fantasy Children, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, why not both? So
sure,
the elves want us to, or you all, because it's your Holdfast, not mine, want y'all to fulfill your obligation to Hell, because Hell is the person that holds the seals that were used to bind their first sleeping huntress mother. So to get the seals back, Hell has to have her obligation fulfilled.
Fascinating.
Neat.
And do the elves want it? Do they care which way it's resolved? Like, do they still get their thing if we have the Draugr curse clause come into effect?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so
like unless the obligation is fulfilled, the elves don't get their seal. Nice. And I'll say until the obligation is fulfilled, the Draugr are rising, right? Because Hell's not taking them away. Because it's been kind of mushy in my head as to exactly how that all works, and now it all clicked. So, cool. Fulfill their deal. Elves get their huntress mother freed. Okay.
Nice. I really like that.
Cool. So then on our little map here, I am going to
So do the elves have placed people in the town to watch and to like be enforcers, kind of?
Yeah,
Potentially, I think that for the Holdfast to not be totally freaked out that elves are around, I think they're at least a known quantity around the Holdfast.
Mm-hmm.
So they're around anyway. And this leads into the thing that I'm drawing here, which whoop, wrong thing. I hit escape and that wasn't good. Let's see.
Oops. No, our hold. Ah.
There we go. So let's make that colored brown and let's change the line thickness to a lot, because now we have the road to the Elven Grove.
Gotcha.
And it's a well-known enough thing that people know how to get there. There is trading back and forth, one presumes. And
what
we'll
if
make
it is a road paved in not like dead wood, but in like gnarled over, like basically like living roots all
like
along it?
they grew the road to the town?
Basically, yeah.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and for our purposes, it acts like cobblestone, right?
Right.
But it's actually a living thing. I dig that a lot.
Yeah, that's very cool.
My actual backyard.
Fantastic. So that is that's our whole setup. And there was one more part to my question, which was why doesn't the Jarl want to do this? And I think I want to leave that ambiguous. So no one quite knows why the Jarl is dragging their feet
Okay.
on this.
Oh, so it's something that seems like it should be fulfillable and it hasn't been fulfilled. It's like,
yep, totally.
Nice.
Like the Skalds talk about it. It's sort of like a commonly accepted knowledge that the Jarl needs to do this, and for some reason they're not. So yeah. And as we proceed with this, just a quick note. I mentioned the gender equality when we were on stream. Another thing is I really prefer the words automatons to golems, because golems are kind of appropriation-ish from Jewish culture, and that's not what this is. So,
yeah, good point. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I had my eyes opened about that a few years back, and so it's something that I've striven to do. But anyway, Ian, if you want to flip to the second slide real quick in the middle so the chat and everyone can see how I take notes for GMing this. So there's a lovely slide with all the Holdfast creation notes. This is what I'm going to use to run the game from. Obviously, if you're running it at home, you can take more time than I'm going to take to actually prep this stuff. But I have been running Iron Edda using a format like this for the better part of 5 years now in one form or another. So this is all I'm going to need to do our little campaign here. So next, we are going to make characters.
Woo!
Excellent.
Yep, and you all have PDFs of the character sheets or have them printed out.
Yep.
And slide 3 that Ian just popped up there is a cheat sheet for us to use for shorthand for the characters. So as we build them, I'm going to write down the pertinent information here, and this is also where we will keep track of your fate points while we play.
Good deal.
So we had a brief meeting before, and we talked about the different destinies that you could choose for this game. Have you all come to a decision about who you would like to play? Somewhat. Okay.
Yep.
Do we want to give a rundown of the different destinies for the chat, and then you all can talk amongst yourselves?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, awesome. So here are the destinies that are available in Iron Edda Accelerated, and sort of what they can do in brief. Let me get my folder up here in a mode where I can actually read them all. Okay, so the first, and they're just in alphabetical order here, is the bandit. The bandit gets to actually create a gang of like-minded scoundrels that they can pal around with. And the the bandits' abilities hinge upon whether or not they've made a score recently, because this is very much like medieval bandits. It's feast or famine. When you have a score, you have a lot of resources you can spend from it, and you're very powerful and influential. And when you have no score available to you, you are beholden to the Holdfast in which you live to be able to do much of anything. And that is a theme of a lot of these destinies, is that you are very powerful, but that power comes at a price, and that price is often how you interact with the society in which you live. It helps keep even characters like the Bone Bonded grounded as people. And speaking of which, you have the Bone Bonded. Congratulations, you have the spirit of a dead giant that lives in your head all the time.
Woo!
The benefit to you is that you can summon up its bones from the ground, and as its rib cage rises forth, you will be limbed in a fire the color of your choosing, and you can go forth and wreck shop on the battlefield. The problem is, to get your uses of that power back, you have to indulge in your giant's worldly desire on a giant scale. So, for example, if your giant loved fried chicken, absolutely would just fucking tear into some fried chicken when it was alive, you have to do that for it to the level that a giant would.
Oh, man.
So, hide your chickens, because the giant's coming for them. And if someone does that, we will do a quick Lines and Veils conversation about how dark we want it to go, because the worldly desire can be pretty nasty if your giant, say, loves ritualistic murder. So,
Legit.
Yeah. Next, we have the Crafter. Pretty much what it says on the tin. The Crafter has a lot of power in creating advantages, making connections with people, and can every so often make a master work that kicks major ass. So they are a useful asset to have. There is a farmer who legit has a farm, and you describe the farm, you give it an aspects to say what you're raising, you give it its own stress track, and when the farmer is standing in defense of their farm, they fight better. So when they're protecting their farm or their holdfast connected to it, they defend much better. They also know the secrets of the earth, right? So if there is a hidden spring that only the farmer knows about, and that's useful somehow, they can just call up those details.
Nice.
There is the leader. Again, what it says on the tin, you are a leader of some type. This may mean the Jarl of the Holdfast, or it may just be someone who has a lot of influence. You get followers who will do what you say. If you tap them out too far, they push back against you and say, hey, what are you doing for us, leader? Right? This is a reciprocal thing. There is a merchant. The merchants buy and sell things. They often buy and sell information as well. And they have a lot of power when it comes to debts and favors, right? They can call them in, or they can collect more of them. They can take on more debt than most people. But having to pay those things off without defaulting on them can be tricky, as you have all established already in this Holdfast with a debt owed to a goddess. You know.
Yeah.
There is the Rune Scribed. You have a rune of power etched, embedded, burned, tattooed, somehow branded, or birthed upon your body. That's wonderful. You were the most powerful thing in the Holdfast until the Bone Bonded came around. In fact, there was a period where Rune Scribed used to rule people, and then everyone decided, well, that sucked, so we're not allowed to do it anymore. So Rune Scribes are the beating sticks of their clans and Holdfasts. The problem is, if you indulge in your runic power too much without indulging in it, it slowly replaces all of the approaches you have on your character sheet until you literally can contain the power of your rune no longer and you explode. So it takes a lot in a one-shot to get that bad. In a 3-session campaign like we're doing, yeah, it could be. But it's all about how you choose to use your power and budget your time effectively. There is a priest who belongs to a cult of a god. They can heal, they can protect, they hold forth the wheel of their deity and are able to do cool things because of it. There is a seer. Seers are your magic type users, but unlike a wizard or a sorcerer in D&D, they don't blast forth fire from their hands. They manipulate the strands of fate. So, for example, if a seer were going to divert a river, they don't just reach out with power and move the river. They reach back into the past and they pluck the thread of fate that has a pebble fall a different direction and divert a trickle of water that eventually became the river that ran past her Holdfast, and the river was always like that.
Excellent.
Yeah. If a seer uses their power too often or too overtly, because they have a power called a word in the right ear where they can just make someone in power do what they want, people start to take notice of that, and seers become mistrusted and subsequently outcast and shunned for a time. So again, you got to balance things out. There is a shield bearer who is basically a walking tank, a warrior from World of Warcraft. They draw aggro, they take hits, they can keep going until the moment they can't any longer. So they don't have the traditional ways of recovering stress or mitigating it that everyone else has. They have a track of conditions called I can outlast you, and every time they would be taken out, they instead mark a box of that, and all their stress boxes get cleared out, except for one.
Ooh.
So they go from 6 to 5, and then 5 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, and so on and so forth until they get a glorious last stand and they die in wonderful combat. And again, that can be mitigated, but if you use your stuff, things start getting a little bit tighter, a little bit quicker. And then we have the skald, the welcome teller of tales. You can always find a place to stay, always find food and drink in exchange for the stories and rumors that you know. You can gather a lot of information, but if you betray someone's secret, you will be ratted out. And you will be basically banished from polite society until you can prove your trustworthiness.
Nice.
So there's your rundown. Those are all the destinies that you have available to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So feel free to talk about what you all want to play, and there's no restriction on how many people can play what. Like I said, I ran a game with 3 seers and it was fantastic. The mechanics are purposefully not balanced. Like Bone Bonded are just more powerful than just about everything else. I see Donna has an idea already. Because there's only one sheet that has that set of boxes at the top, and that's the rune scribed. So
Nice.
we have a rune scribed. We during the aspects of when we do the character aspects, we'll talk about what rune you have.
Okay.
So if you haven't decided on that, you can make that decision as we go.
Okay. Yeah, I've kind of already decided based on what we're rolling up together. And,
okay.
But we'll see how it plays out as we go along, because I might change it.
Cool. Sure. So we have a rune scribed. Ian or Adira, what are you thinking?
So I had a really quick question. Mm-hmm. My general thought was bone bonded, but when we were talking about the elves and we were talking about like elves being embedded in the holdfast and things like that, is that a viable sort of character option?
To be an elf?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, in pre-release material that I may end up writing someday, there was an outsider destiny that meant you were not from Midgard, and elves were part of that.
Like a diplomat or something, or just like we're here to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do, or just like.
So in general, the outsider was anyone who's not originally from Midgard. So an immigrant or a trader, or someone who just wasn't from around here, right? In terms of what Adira's elf would be, that's totally that's up to her. Right. However, if you wanted to be an elf, what we would do is we would use the bone bonded as a template. And because the elves in pretty much every culture in the world has some answer to the dwarves. And as you alluded to, the obvious answer is that elves have living trees.
Yeah.
You basically can summon forth an ent from the ground.
Huh.
Sweets.
So what we'll do is we can totally do that. And instead of, actually we'll still call it a worldly desire, but just think of it as a worldly desire of a newly sentient tree and what it would want to experience about actually being alive and aware of itself and its physical surroundings.
Yeah.
So you have time to think about that. But that's the direction we would go with that, if that's all right with you.
I'm very into that. I'm gonna have all sorts of weird old tree opinions about things.
Yes. Hashtag tree pinions for anyone who is playing along at home. And cool. So we have a rune scribed, and A Willowbound, by the way, is the overall name of those.
Cool.
Yeah. And Ian, what are you thinking?
I think I might want to play. I want to play into the pact a little bit with Hell and how that needs to be resolved. So I'm torn between a seer or possibly even doing a priest.
Ooh.
Okay. So I will say that as a small hiccup on my part in the pre-generated character sheets that I gave you all, for some reason I neglected to put a priest in there.
Okay.
That's not a no. I have all the information in the book, and you have it in the PDF as well. So it's workable. It's just not going to be as at your fingertips as the others.
Let's go with the seer then. That's a good reason to tip it over. So
okay, fantastic. So we have a seer, a bone bonded, and a rune scribed, which honestly, like those are the three most like prototypical characters that a lot of people pick, which I'm fine with.
Nice.
Like they work real well together. So what we do now is we proceed on to filling out your character sheets, and we start with your character aspects. For those of you who are watching who are not familiar with Fate, and as a refresher for my three players here, I'm going to do a quick description of aspects and how they work in Fate and all that good stuff. So you guys are going to get to hear the Han Solo example again. But in Fate, aspects are short descriptive phrases that make things true. Every character in Fate Core, and in this case Fate Accelerated, have 5 of them. And every Fate game that I'm aware of has a high concept and a trouble. The high concept is the thing that is the most true about you. Your trouble is the thing that always gets in your way. And in Fate, those come into play because we all start with some Fate points, right? These are bennies or hero points or whatever currency from any game you're familiar with that when the die roll doesn't go the way you want or you need additional information outside of a die roll, you can spend them. But in Fate, you can spend them by invoking an aspect and saying why this notable phrase, a thing about you or a thing about the world around you, why it helps you. As a character, you get back.
Tracy, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. Your microphone's fuzzing on me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bump a connection or something like that?
I don't think so. But let me just.
Adira, do you want to talk at me for a second to see if it's him or if it's my connection?
Hello.
Oh no, it seems like it's my connection because everybody's fuzzy.
Oh no.
Oh no, that's not good.
Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, everybody.
No problem.
And it seems like it's an issue with Zoom. Cool.
Oh no.
Box 350. Boston, Mass.
All right.
Hell sells seashells by the seashore.
I don't know.
Sorry, I'm just getting to the character page, so it's kind of that works.
Yeah.
Hey chat, is it coming through scratchy to you? Maybe it's coming through fine, but can you guys? Does it sound scratchy on you guys' end, like when other people talk?
Nope, it's fine with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a channel.
Yeah, we'll see if chat complains because it may just be on my end somehow. Sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
Wanted to make sure we weren't missing things.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and we'll see if somebody complains.
Okay, fair enough. So to get Fate points back, you have to have your aspects compelled, where you play to the downside of them, right? So for this example, I like to use Han Solo from Star Wars Episode 4. His high concept in that movie is smuggler with a heart of gold, and his trouble is neck deep in debt to Jabba the Hutt. So in Mos Eisley Cantina, Han is sitting there across from Greedo. Greedo, threatens him. Good. It's okay now. Fantastic. It has resolved itself.
All right. Good deal.
Yeah. Han's sitting across from Greedo. He wants to shoot Greedo and get out of there. So Han's player rolls the dice and does not do as well as they want to. So Han's player holds up a fate point and says, I'm neck deep in debt to Jabba the Hutt. I have to shoot this guy and get out of here. So they spend the fate point. They either get a +2 on their roll or re-roll the dice and do better. And Bob's your uncle. There they go. They're off. To get the fate points back at the end of episode 4, Han has his money. He's ready to fly away. And the GM holds up a fate point and offers it to the player playing Han Solo and says, but you are a smuggler with a heart of gold. You need to fly back in and help Luke. Han's player goes, shit, and accepts the compel and flies back into the Battle of Yavin. So that's the brief synopsis of how that stuff works. And we are going to flesh out these characters to start with by filling in all 5 of these aspects. We'll do the first 4 first. Then we will take a divergence into your approach ratings, like the ratings on your actual attributes and things. We'll pick some stunts for your characters. We'll talk about what your conditions can do. And then the last thing we do before we start play is we fill in the last aspect, which is the group aspect. Right. Because the characters have to be firmly established before we do that last one. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Ian, you're muted. Thank you.
Yes, I am. I was trying to fix the problem.
Sure.
All right, there we go.
So, your characters. Think about but what is the most true thing about them? That will be your high concept. And if you have to like sort of talk through it and say, well, I think it might be this, but I'm not entirely sure, that's fine. Because one of the things I've gotten really good at in doing this is coming up with aspects.
Nice.
So yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of playing Fate is aspects.
Good deal. Do either of you guys have a idea that you want to start us off with defining some stuff, or would you like me to talk about my seer a bit?
Yeah, I have a pretty clear high concept, I feel like, with this character.
Okay, and Adira, what is the high concept you're thinking of?
I'm thinking fresh envoy of Eavilheimr.
That was fresh, Fresh?
Yeah, as
awesome.
in, like, young, new. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, that is a good example of a nice aspect because it tells us something about you, it gives us some background, and it's a thing that can work either positively for you or negatively for you. Mm-hmm. Cool. Wonderful. Denicia, who is this rune described?
I'm kind of seeing them as what was I looking here? I had this here. This. So I'm kind of like the protector of knowledge. A protector of the skalds and the skald hearth.
Okay. Protector of the skald hearth is a fantastic high concept. Nice. Again, because it tells us something about you and it can cut both ways.
Yeah.
So yeah. Wonderful. Awesome. And Ian, for your seer, who is the seer?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
1 second. I'm just switching my headphones over.
Oh, while we wait, I wanted to have a quick sort of little like thank you, Tracy, about the note that you made about golems. Like, I'm a Jewish person, and it sometimes would really like piss me off in D&D and different things. When like
sorry about that.
Just like evil, bad. It's not good.
It's one of those small things. Like you can easily say automatons, and you're getting across exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
In that instance, whereas the word golem carries a whole lot of cultural and
Okay. Yes, and I can actually hear you guys now. Woo! Sometimes you just gotta go wired. That's a good question. I think that they are kind of on the young side and still sort of growing into having the responsibility of like being able to pluck it at fate, and kind of the expectations that come with it. Yeah, I wonder if it's like a thing that there's just one seer at a time in this village, and the old seer was killed in one of these battles that has like painted our fields red recently, like died on the glory, and so the mantle like descended on my character in some capacity. Yeah. Mm. Nice. I like it. I think that they are lacking in self confidence and are not. They weren't prepared and didn't particularly want this responsibility. Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're quite to the grossly status. I think just. Yep. I think I would like. Oh no. Okay. Sorry for the audio issues tonight, guys. I am re-adding you. Let's try now.
Now, hello.
Oh,
I'm seeing little bars bouncing. We'll see if
Okay.
we'll see what chat has to say.
Chatters, can you hear me? I know you can see me.
All right. So let's go.
So yeah, you two have those 9 warrior clans to choose from. Ian, what's resonating with you for this character?
I think I would like this seer to be from the clan of the Hammer. Like this was not. They're a very practical, and practiced person. They like the sort of the routine and the methodicalness of the forge, and so the being unmoored from that is quite difficult for them.
Awesome. Sound is back where it should be.
Awesome.
Awesome. So do you want to go with the world was meant to be shaped, or do you want to write your own aspect that sort of reflects your personal connection?
No, I think that works just fine.
Awesome. Cool. Denicia, what clan works for your rune scribed?
I like the clan of the dragon.
Nice.
So you're just an angry person in general, not just because of the skald. Okay, cool.
Because we're not getting anywhere with our, with what we're doing with hell, and it'd be really great if we could get this done. And so I stay angry a lot.
Awesome. And Adira, that takes us to your tree bond.
yes.
So, what is your relationship with the sentient tree whose presence is in your head always like?
I think it is. I was thinking sort of like reluctant friendship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roots planted into rocky soil.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking, what about splinters in my soul?
Wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah, so there are, every time you think things are fine, you just feel this twinge.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think because it's a bond that goes both ways, like that, I think it cuts in both directions, because you're not, I feel like this is, you're not a traditional elf.
Yeah.
But this tree is a very traditional tree, whatever that means. It has certain expectations of what this means, because elves are in communion with the trees. The trees have some idea of what it means to awaken to this, and your tree got the weird one. Okay, cool. So what is your tree's high concept?
I think my tree's high concept is ancient oak.
Wonderful. And what is your tree's worldly desire?
So let's talk about veils and things.
Sure.
So, when we talk about the worldly desire for the tree, some different things came to mind. One of them was a sort of like wish to sort of experience sort of like the like death rebirth cycle of wildfires.
Ooh,
okay,
interesting.
One of them was about like wanting to feel and touch like body heat and like blood and like things of the flesh. And another one was the general just worldly desire of just like stillness, basically.
Okay.
Like just going somewhere and just
Rooting.
Rooting and watching and watching and watching.
Okay.
In a sort of like in a very intrusive fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wants to root like in someone's living room.
Right. So when I think about the worldly desire and what it sort of accomplishes mechanically, right? It's supposed to be something that sets you apart and makes you seem alien to those around you. So I think all three of those satisfy those criteria. I think the one of the three to me that affords the most interesting and also the potentially most squicky ones is the second one, which is
the flesh and the body.
The flesh and the body. I like that one the best, with the caveat that anyone who wants to draw a veil over a scene that is starting to become too much or wants to hit the fast forward button and just zoop past that can just give the high sign and we zoop past that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will probably be the one to do that more readily than anyone else because I get a little self-conscious in a public medium about the things that may come out of my mouth. In a private group, I will go a lot of different places, but because I'm in public, I want to I will tend to draw veils sooner than I otherwise would. So
fair enough.
In other words, I'm comfortable with that idea. So
okay,
does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
So then experiences of the flesh.
I think hold living heat.
Hold living heat. I like it. And then one last bit that we have to establish for your tree, aside from a name, which we can, names are hard, so you can think about that as we're going. You get a unique approach that you can only use when the tree is summoned. This is beyond your 6 standard flashy or your flair, haste, guile, force, intellect, focus, all that. It's something else your tree does that's unique to you. And it doesn't have to be in a combat sense. It can just be in a, hey, I'm being a tree in this scene sense. What can your tree do that is unique? How does your tree approach things?
How does my tree approach things? I think that my tree approaches things. So I want to definitely have my tree approaching things in a contrasting way of how the character is approaching things. Since we have sort of set them up with that sort of contrast. So the character seems to be someone who's likely going to be a little sort of like flary and like poetic. And so
something like rooted.
Yeah.
Yeah, sturdy, kind of playing into the oakiness, steadfast.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a word that's a little more active than like rooted and sturdy.
Sure.
Unyielding?
Unyielding, perhaps? Yeah. Unbending? Stiff, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, stiff. I like stiff because it doesn't imply that you don't move. It just implies that there's a stubbornness to it when you do move. I get a very British definition of stiff when I hear that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So we'll come back to the name for that because we'll name all the characters here in a little bit and you can have time to let things percolate. The next thing is your sacred item. This is for all of the characters except for Danicia's, a noun phrase that is important to you. So it can be a physical thing like my grandfather's axe or my mother's shield, or it can be an ephemeral thing like my uncle's sage advice or my grandfather's last words. For Danicia, your sacred item is your rune. And this is where we get to find out which rune you've chosen and how it is marked upon your body.
All right.
So first of all, what rune did you choose?
I chose Isa.
Isa, the rune of ice.
Yeah.
Okay. And how is Isa, how does it appear on your body?
It's just like straight down my cheek, just right there.
And is it a tattoo, a brand, a birthmark, a living piece of ice embedded into your flesh?
It's a tattoo.
Okay. So you have a tattooed rune of Isa as your sacred item.
Yep.
Nice.
There.
Wonderful.
There's no missing it there.
Yeah.
Fight.
Cool. And then Ian or Adira, what are your sacred items?
I think I'm wondering if there's something. So, becoming a seer in this context, this holdfast seer is an involuntary thing, and I wonder if it's a physical manifestation that marks you as the new seer. You know that.
Oh yeah.
So it could be the seer's milky eyes or something along those lines.
Right.
So it's some physical distinguishing thing.
Or your eyes glow like a cat when light hits them the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think that mark is? Like, what's something that is noticeable and I imagine from your description a little bit unsettling? I will also say that traditionally, seers are very linked with Odin. And the way that Odin gained the power of the runes in Norse myth is that he sacrificed his right or his left eye and hung himself. That was for some knowledge. Then he also hung himself on a branch of the world tree for 9 days with a spear in his side. So there are 3 very prominent marks that Odin had to denote the knowledge he had gained.
Yeah. That's so. I mean, I was kind of the obvious is the missing eye. That's a very classic thing. I wonder if it actually manifests as a weeping wound on the side.
Oh,
like that spear wound is just always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the unhealing mark of the seer. Wonderful. Cool. And Adira, what sacred item are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about like a talisman of some sort. I'm thinking like my mother's talisman.
Okay. What is it crafted from?
So when we talked about the elves, we talked about the huntress mother having been sealed away, and half of the seals are held by Hel. So perhaps it's likely like a stone seal, right?
Yeah.
That sort of fits with the general aesthetic. So yeah, I'm thinking that this is like a stone talisman. Possibly even it is like one of the seals, because the envoy was sent to collect the other seals. So they were sent with the seals already.
So my mother's stone seal of the huntress mother. Or
perhaps the mother is the huntress mother.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my mother's stone seal.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm here. I'm here for all of this. I love connections like that. Like that's one of my favorite things when people take the established fiction and go, well, what if I'm like right next to that thing? Like that's wonderful. Thank you. Cool. So now we do some more mechanically fiddly things. I'm gonna pop open the PDFs I have for your 3 destinies, and we will talk about your approaches, your conditions, and your stunts, just so we have a quick mechanical grounding in how all of this stuff is going to work.
Cool.
So I will again, in general, I'm going to go left to right, just because that's what I can see. But the first thing all of you can do is you can fill in your approaches. And unlike a lot of games where you would be concerned with what your character can do, in this game, Fate Accelerated is concerned with how your character does it. So if you say, I want to punch that person, I'm going to ask you how you punch them. And you then look to your approaches to describe that. And for those listening along at home, the approaches are flair, so flashy style, focus, which is patience and determination, force, which is what it says on the tin, guile, which is sneakiness and cleverness, haste, again what it says on the tin, and intellect, which is your brains and logic. Here are the numbers you get to plug in. You get to rate one of those at +3. You get to rate 2 of those at 2, 2 of those at 1, and 1 at 0. None of your destinies have anything contingent upon needing a high rating in any one of those, except for our seer.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do your seer magic without owing debts to divine or otherwise powerful beings, or otherwise facing costs for them, then you should put your focus at +3.
Fair enough.
If it is more interesting to you to owe such debts, then do whatever you want. But I'll give you all a moment to get those ratings down, and if you could all just give a thumbs up when you are completed with your ratings, we will then move on.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
We're still on the character slide, right? You didn't want us to be somewhere else.
Oh yeah, the character slide is basically what can stay up for the time being.
Great.
Yep.
Do you want us to put our names in there if we have our names?
Yes, if you have a name, go ahead and type it in. How's it going, Adira?
I'm just thinking about a name really quick.
Okay. Oh, we can. Usually, I do the names right before the group aspect.
Okay.
So you can continue to. I just want to know if I can move on to talking about the seer while you're pondering. Okay.
Go right
Okay.
ahead.
Cool.
I have
Awesome.
my approach all set up.
Okay. Wonderful. So let's start with the seer here. So you have on your sheet some conditions there.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, if you would, for the folks who are watching along at home, read off your seer magic conditions and then the little blurb that is next to each of them.
Sure thing. So we're doing the unique conditions?
Yeah. So are you looking at the pre-generated sheet that I gave you, or just the
Oh, no,
conditions
sorry.
themselves?
I had the game PDF up. I can go grab that sheet, though.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. Go ahead and just read off the unique conditions.
Okay.
You don't have to read the entire bit of it because that's a whole lot to rattle off. So if you'll just read off the unique conditions, I'll then summarize them for the folks.
Sure. So the first is seer magic. And that's sticky with 3 boxes.
Okay. You can do all of them, and then I'll...
Okay, sure. We have a word in the right ear, which is lasting, with 1 box. Mistrusted, which is sticky with 3 boxes, and shunned, which is lasting and is a single box.
Yeah. So seer magic is how you do most of what you do, right? It always works the same way. You mark a box and you roll focus. You have to beat a 4, and you basically create a really big, broad aspect, right? Some big pervasive effect.
Gotcha.
It's not like bone bonded bashing things flashy, but you can do a lot with it. We'll establish the fictional boundaries as a negotiation. You always get at least 2 invocations on it, which is usually you just get 1 on creating an advantage. But you either have to mark a box of indebted to some supernatural being, or a box of mistrusted, as the people around you go, "What the fuck did you just do?"
Yeah.
So that's that. Mistrusted, when you mark those, it sort of calls out how people are looking at you sideways, and the normal difficulties of social interactions are kicked up by 1 per marked box.
Nice.
Yep. So usually average difficulties in Fade is a 2, or it's an opposed roll. Effectively, that gives me pluses on my opposed rolls, or takes your difficulty up to potentially a 5.
Ouch.
Right? Yeah, which is tough to overcome. If all of your mistrusted boxes are marked, you mark shunned, which means you have done too much wiggity shit and people don't want to be around you. So you are not allowed to take part in the society. The Holdfast, and that lasts until the end of the next session.
Oh.
So then the only people you can interact with are people who are also outcast at the time. So like maybe a bone bonded that is an abomination, right? Or a skald that is on the outs, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So you'll be around, you can talk to people, but they will not speak to you. So just watch how your mistrusted track is going, because it can get a little dicey for you. And the last thing you have is a word in the right ear. You get to mark that condition and have your advice heeded by someone in a position of power. We decide if it is worth a use for the person you're talking to. And I generally treat this a lot like a wish spell in D&D. They will go do the thing that you said to do as literally as you phrase it. So watch your phrasing.
Okay.
Because it can have a lot of unforeseen consequences.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, so while I move on to the rune scribed, you can take a look at your stunts. You start with all the core stunts that are listed in the book or on the character sheet. You get to pick 1 more for free, and you can have up to 3 additional ones by spending points of refresh. What that means, though, is you lose those as starting fate points.
Gotcha.
So you can pour over that information while we talk about the rune scribes stuff.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So rune scribed, would you please read your conditions to the audience?
You got it. So I've got a runic power at 3 boxes, so where I can use it as a heroic scale. And I've got rune bound at 1 box where I can use my rune at a cost. And then ruptured, 1 box, is I'm overtaken by my rune's power.
Yep. So when you mark runic power, you get to, for the rest of the scene, use your rune for any approach that you're using, right? You get to describe how icy it is, and you get to do all the wonderful descriptive things that you want to. If you have all of your boxes marked and you want to use your power even still, you can mark stress boxes and then mark rune burned. We write another aspect that describes how your body is physically altered by your rune for a time being. And if you are taken out while rune burned is marked, or if we spiral down to the point where, oh, actually, if you're taken out while rune burned is marked, your rune saves your life, but that's when we replace one of your approaches.
Right.
So your forceful approach, for example, just gets replaced with Isa. And to use that approach, you have to use Isa along with the marking of all the boxes. If that happens too often, you explode with ruptured.
Minor downside.
Yeah.
That's why the names of the stunts are great.
Yeah. And same as with Ian, you have stunts to pick from. I noticed when I did a recording with Character Creation Cast last night, 2 nights ago, something like that. And I noticed that I unfortunately did not write enough stunts for the Rune Scribed. So you could take all of your stunts and still have more refresh left than most people.
Oh.
So just keep that in mind. You literally can have all of them and still have 2 points of refresh. So as some errata or addenda, I will be writing more stunts at some point in time.
Okay.
And then our bone bonded, Adira, if you would read your conditions to the people.
Yes. The first condition is summon the bones, or in this case, summon the branches.
Mhm.
This condition uses 5 boxes to represent your control over the massive tree bound to your spirit. When you want to operate...
A small addenda, it is only 3 boxes.
3 boxes.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, again, another bit of errata that I've noticed.
Yeah. 3 boxes. When you want to operate at giant scale by using the wood, mark a box. Recover a box by indulging in your tree's worldly desire aspect.
Mhm.
If all 3 boxes are marked and you wish to operate at giant scale, you may mark the out of control condition to do so, which I'll talk about next. If you wish to recover all the boxes at once, you can mark the abomination condition. So, out of control. Mark this condition when you want to use summon the branches when all the boxes are marked, or when indicated by the GM. While out of control, the wood inside of you has control over your body for a time. You are able to operate at giant scale for the remainder of the current conflict. Following that, the tree gains control. The tree will use its time to indulge their worldly desire aspect to the extreme. People will take notice of this indulgence. Recover out of control when the tree has indulged in a way that will make life difficult in the Holdfast or among your companions. Mark the abomination condition. And then abomination. Mark this condition to recover all the boxes of summon the branches, or when you recover out of control. The Willowbond is seen by many as an affront to the way of life in Midgard. People shun and avoid you. You're an outcast in the same way that the seer was that we talked about earlier. Yeah, and you recover it by performing a selfless or heroic act for another person without involving your tree.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of fictional slanting that we're doing for the tree thing because the elves are pretty cool with the tree bond, but among the people you are finding yourself around all the time is when that stuff is really in play.
Yeah.
And same deal, you get the core stunts of your destiny, and then you can choose up to 3 more by spending down your refresh. A quick note, if you don't want to choose all of your stunts now, as we play, and this goes for everybody, as we play, you can situationally go, oh, I think I would have that stunt in that instance, and we'll just spend the refresh down then and give you that stunt. As well, if we run into a circumstance where you are like, I really feel like I should be able to do this because of who my character is or what the archetype is, we'll make a stunt on the fly. Stunts are much more often more easily written in play than they are in abstentia from it.
Gotcha.
At least they are for me. So we can backfill some stuff without much of a problem. I will run down the core stunts for each of your destinies real quick so everyone knows what those are. And then if you have chosen some additional ones, you can then outline them. So since we were on the bone bonded or the willow bonded, we'll go with those. So the 2 you have are tree's presence. Because of the wood residing in your body, you are able to channel its might through your voice. You get a +2 to create advantages with force when you speak with the strength of your tree.
Ooh.
Nice.
And then knowledge of the ages. Your tree knows much. Gain +2 when you use guile to overcome an obstacle involving esoteric or ancient knowledge. It can only be used for uncommon knowledge. Your tree cares not for the people around you, but instead holds onto deep secrets from a forgotten time.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah. The Rune Scribed starts off with Runic Boost. You can spend a fate point and mark Rune Burned to channel additional power into your rune, allowing it to function at epic scale for an exchange. If Rune Burn is already marked, you can do this, but you immediately mark the ruptured condition following your action. And then Better to Burn Out. As you are driven by the power of your rune, you get a +2 to overcome when you use your runic approach. You must mark the appropriate conditions to use the approach as normal. So overcome is one of the 4 actions, and just as a brief primer, it is basically like a skill check, either against a static difficulty or opposed. Right. So not when dealing stress to someone, not when defending against things, not when making new aspects, but anything else. So it's an incentive for the Rune Scribe to like maybe draw on a little bit too much power.
Nice.
Excuse me. And then we have the Seer. The Seer's 2 default stunts are Intervention. This is one of my favorites. Once per session, if a character is about to die, the Seer can save them. Can just pluck their strand of fate and suddenly they don't die.
Nice. That's very cool.
That includes the Rune Scribed if they were about to pop, for example.
Nice.
If the character is grateful for that intervention, they mark 2 boxes of the indebted condition. If they are not grateful, they gain the broken fate condition, which is described on a page in the book, and we'll look it up if it comes into play.
Sure.
In either case, the character who is saved has a destiny and may choose to change their destiny, spending refresh and advancements as normal. So
Wow.
the Rune Scribed could choose to not be a Rune Scribed any longer. The Bone Bonded could lose their bone bond, so on and so forth. So that's your one stunt. Your other one is Fate Led Me Here. Because fate guides your actions once per scene, you can spend a fate point to just show up.
Nice.
You can just Kool-Aid Man your way into the scene.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That is actually, it's a pretty common stunt in fate games, like with magical type creatures, but it's also a power that the Faceless has in Apocalypse World 2, and in that game it is actually called Oh Yeah.
Awesome.
So Seer, did you choose any additional stunts?
I was looking over them. I'm intrigued. I definitely want the Eyes of the Raven one because that's just too cool. You have a Raven companion given to you by the powers of fate, and once per scene, you may roll and overcome with intellect to see, perceive, or notice through that Raven's eyes, no matter how far from it you are.
Okay.
I'm digging on that one. And I think that I am taking intellect as my top approach for this year instead of focus. Cool. I think that's where they were headed in life before,
Yeah.
Fate intervened. And then I think I'm debating on ritual staff. I'm trying to decide if there's a staff that's handed down with this role or not.
It makes sense that there would be.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'll do that as well then. Okay.
Then on the sheet that we're using through the Google slide, I'm going to delete 2 fate points that are sitting on. Oh, actually, you get 1 for free, right? So never mind. I'm going to delete 1 fate point. Cool. So you're starting with a starting refresh of 3.
Good deal.
And Rune Scribed, were there any additional stunts you wanted?
I don't know yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep, keep poking around. No worries. And Bone Bonded, were there any additional stunts that you wish to take?
Yeah, I for sure very much am into the Restlessness of the Dead, which is where you don't need to sleep. I think that seems great for a tree bond.
Yep.
And I was considering like Reshape the Bones or Next to the Gods in Power, but I think I'll just sort of hold here, and if things come up in play, buy them later.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, the last thing we need to do before we do the group aspect is we need to name all of these lovely people. And I already see 3 names in there. Fantastic. You all have exceeded my expectations to a ridiculous degree because names are difficult. So for the remainder of this, as we play, I will address you by your character names. Would you, just so I get the pronunciations right, would you introduce your characters beginning with our seer?
Sure. Our seer is going to be Luhrin Hodson.
Okay. And the rune scribed?
That's Ogetti, so Dieter.
Okay. And the Willowbonded?
Riina Willowbonded. And
Excellent.
with the ancient oak Bazakhor.
Ooh,
wonderful.
That's an excellent oak name.
Yeah, it is really good. Okay, so the last thing that we do before we call these characters done and we begin to actually play this game that we've set up is we create our group aspect. If you have played Dungeon World, this will seem familiar to you because these are basically bonds. What we do is you come up with an aspect that directly names one of the other characters. These, unlike Dungeon World, are unidirectional though.
Okay.
So whomever goes first will name another character in their aspect. There'll be mutual agreement as to whether or not that's a bit of shared history, right? Because it's often useful for shared history or for relational dynamics. Then the person who is named will choose the third person, and the third person will go back to the first. So thinking about who your characters are, thinking about what you see in those aspects and everything that we've heard up to this point, does anyone have a connection they can think of to one of the other 2 players or other 2 characters?
Sort of. So is it Riina?
Yeah, Riina.
Is that with the elves wanting to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do? I think that would be kind of almost like a partnership that we're trying to, on both sides, making sure that we need to take care of this thing to hell, because otherwise the elves are going to not help us. So that's our contact.
Okay. So I'm working with Riina to make sure things go right.
Right.
Okay.
Nice.
That we do our duty. That we do our duty.
Okay. I'm working with Riina to fulfill our duty.
Yeah.
Like that.
So then, Riina, what is your connection to Luhrin? And just as an aside, and this is one where mutual agreement would have to come in, we don't know who your unrequited love is yet.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that if you want to go that way.
Same.
And I think the minor tweak I would have in that case is that Luhrin's just like oblivious, not like directly unrequited in the rejection sense, you know?
Yeah.
But we don't have to go that way at all if you don't want to.
Yeah, possibly.
Because that can be interesting as an NPC too, that, you know, causes other problems.
Yeah. I mean, we could take we're in this together even a little further, but I'm open, yay or nay, or that we're just good pals, that we're working together as a team. We're a team.
So Luhrin's the seer.
Yeah.
So, and he's like a very new seer. So
he was like just about to finish his blacksmith apprenticeship, I think. When he got diverted.
Yeah. So, does he have like much of like the like ear of the like town and like the Holdfast yet, or no? Like, does the Jarl really like listen to him?
Well, I think by dint of the power.
Also, I was just assuming he can pronouns for Luhrin. So, what pronouns?
Yeah. I used Hodson, so I'm going to use he/him pronouns for Luhrin.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for
Yeah.
checking. I think because this like the succession of this seer position is a very known thing, it comes with expectations right away. We this is a somewhat known quantity in our little Holdfast, so like you need to pick up where the last person left off. So I think that even though they may not quite know what to do with it yet, they do have the ear of the town in that sense.
Okay. Well, then this still leaves open the possibility that Luhrin could be the unrequited love for Riina, but I think the connection should be more about how, since Riina is the envoy from Eilfheim, that like the main like person that like she has been like sent to like talk to try and like sort of like politic at is Luhrin.
Makes sense.
Okay, so Luhrin is my primary connection to the Holdfast. Is that Luhrin is my political connection?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're just working teammates.
Yeah. No.
Teammates
Yeah. We're
trying to get stuff done.
Yeah. We're teammates in like duty and almost like religion.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And then Luhrin, what is your connection to Ogetti?
I don't know, Denise. I am curious about if you have thoughts about this, but I was thinking maybe Luhrin knows a secret of Ogetti's, maybe something from when they were younger or something along those lines. I guess Ogetti's a little bit older than Luhrin, but if there's
Could be like a family secret that you're holding on to, of some sort.
it could even be it might be something relatively recent that he saw through the use of the Eyes of the Raven power.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just what the Raven was checking out at the moment.
Oh, yeah, it could be something like, how she's like angry all the time and all this stuff. Is that some of that anger could be like inner anger is that what's kind of driving that based on how the young skald died, or some other kind of, or how that our family is really trying to. Maybe I'm not as confident as I think I am, and maybe I've.
Can I pitch you all something?
Sure.
Is Ogetti?
Yeah.
Does Ogetti feel responsible for the death of the young skald?
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so is she actually directly responsible, either through direct action or inattention?
Yes.
Okay, so Luhrin, I know why. I know Ogetti let let's see, we'll call her Bronwyn. I know why Ogetti let Bronwyn die.
That's intense.
Uh-huh. Okay. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, we have our characters.
Nice.
Yeah. So typically what I do at this point in time is I take a break, 5-10 minutes or so for
Perfect.
stretches, biological needs, and then also for me to mentally weave some threads together. Ian, is that cool with you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. We will do that, and then we will come back and we will begin playing this game. Sound good?
Awesome.
Yes.
Sounds super good.
Okay. Then gameplay to resume in 10. If we're all back sooner than that, we can just start chatting about stuff. But
all
see you
right.
in 10.
Yeah, see you in 10, y'all.
Yeah.
1. All right, we are back. Thanks for hanging out through the break, all y'all in chat. And yeah, Tracy just brought up an excellent point that we neglected to name our little Holdfast. So I think that's the first order of business.
Yeah, if you would pop up slide 1 there in the center there, Ian.
Sure thing.
So cities in Midgard usually end the suffixes Lund, meaning land, Heim, meaning home, or Borg, meaning city or town. There is an established holdfast in the setting already that is called Hell's Gate, which is all the way to the on the southeastern portion of Midgard, which Midgard stretches from basically all across Europe as we would know it.
Sure.
So this would be a part of Europe minus the Mediterranean Ocean that sort of like abuts northern Africa, bleeding into the Sahara,
Okay.
off to the further east. So it's extremely hot down here. You're on the edge of it being like an area that's good for growing things if we're going that direction. You don't have to be that, obviously, but that is a thing that does exist, and it's an area that does exist. It is shares some likenesses with what y'all are doing. So what do you think your holdfast might be called?
Well, it does not strike me as like a Borg. I don't think we're that large.
Okay.
Because we're talking about only being like 3 generations old at this point, right? Or this is the
Sure.
3rd generation of settlers here. So how
so
long did Ragnarok happen, actually? Is this like was this settled post-Ragnarok?
No, Ragnarok has been 7 years.
Okay.
Or so.
Yeah,
So
if
this is in its 3rd generation, Aevilheimr sounds appropriate to me, sort of named after like what the area is known for.
Mm-hmm.
It could be Helheim, like the home of the goddess Hel,
Mm-hmm.
which is grim and dark and grimdark all at once.
I like to think that given the timeline, the clause of the contract was like, this is good until Ragnarok, and then you owe me this. And they're like, shoot, like we're set. Like Ragnarok's never coming.
It's like whelps.
Yep, and then it did.
Yeah.
Obviously, if that conflicts with what you had.
No. That puts me in mind of like a people who had the idea that things were never going to break bad for them. So I feel like it has almost an overly idyllic like name, like, you know, the home that would never die or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I just called up an Old Norse to English translator, and it's not giving me any words for eternal,
or like forever, or like there's like a millennium or century word, maybe like millennium home, kind of. Or age or era, I guess, maybe.
Oh, here we go. So the word for time, age, life story, or life is Avi. It is the AE jammed together character, VI.
Okay.
So like Aevilheimr.
Aevilheimr
would be like life home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that.
Okay, cool. Let me. I'm going to leave it uncapitalized just because I have no idea how to capitalize that particular special character.
Fair enough.
And
I like that you have the control code for that handy, though. Just
no, I copied it from the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a bunch of alt codes memorized. That is not one of them.
Well, I can do it.
Oh,
I don't know if @zeros.bar is still watching, but the Ash, the AE, is like their favorite character in existence. So
wonderful.
they're gonna geek out about this when they catch up.
Aevilheimr. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll drop the L in there for pronunciation purposes, which also makes it sound like Evil Home to us English speakers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of perfect. It really means home of life. And if we want to get extra Norse, we're gonna do this. We'll drop the R at the end.
Oh, I like it.
Aevilheimr.
That has a good feel.
It actually means the realm of life and of life and home right now. So yeah. There's love it.
Bye, Zero.
Yeah, Exo, I have no idea if that is how it's actually pronounced. But given that I don't speak any Norwegian or Norse-derived languages, I'm just going to do my best and call it Aevilheimr with a sort of bad Norse accent. As soon as I start pronouncing like names that have anything to do with Norse, I slip into this weird thing that I have no idea if it's good or bad. So anyway, so we have the Holdfast of Aevilheimr. And again, for the purposes of people watching along at home, so you can see how I am doing this, Ian, if you would slip over to slide 4.
Sure.
So Iron Edda Accelerated has a story stress thing that basically it's kind of like fronts in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, where you can say, here is the doom that is coming if it is not addressed, right? Except that you name each step with an aspect. And we have a bunch of boxes here. When every pair of boxes is checked, that aspect is sort of present as a scene aspect, as a thing that is.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in time, we have the first 2 boxes on both of these tracks are marked. So that means that both Hell's Foreboding and Creeping Weirdness are things that are present in and around the Holdfast right now. So what I'm going to do is on slide 5, this is one of our play areas. We have a few slides that are just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And there are aspect cards over there. There are fate points on the other side. And what we can do, we basically just treat these like index cards, right? So I'm just putting scene aspects down for our story as a whole. So we have Hell's Foreboding is a thing that is around and true, and we have Creeping Weirdness. Now,
I mean, how else is weirdness going to get around, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mechanically, y'all can add invocations to these if you want to, if it comes up in play, or you can spend your own fate points on invoking them as we go. The last thing we need to do before we start is a quick mechanical rundown of the things you can do in this game.
Cool.
I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. Basically, most of what you're going to do is called an overcome action. You can think of it like a skill check in most traditional RPGs. I will either set the difficulty for you, or it'll be rolled in opposition, and I will roll the dice on my side, or your fellow player will roll the dice if it is, you're opposing each other. And it's just trying to get past something. As a reminder, you need to exceed the difficulty for a clean success. You get 3 over, that's success with style. We talk about some bonus for you. If it is tied, that is a success at a minor cost. If it is less than that, it's a failure, or we negotiate a major cost for you to succeed. If you wish to deal stress to someone, think of it like hurting them hit point wise in a D&D type game, then that's the attack action. It is always opposed by the defend action. And the number of points or shifts, that, as we call them in this game, that you get over your opponent's number is how many boxes of stress you mark. In Fate Accelerated, you mark a number of boxes equal to a number of shifts. Fate Core is different. We will not explain how it's different now. That's not important. After rolls, you can always negotiate things by invoking aspects. So if I say, okay, well, I got a 3 and you got a 2, you can then say, okay, well, I invoke my high concept and spend a fate point, and that takes you up to a 4. And then I can do that in return. So we can get into a little bidding war on any of these rolls. As well, if you take a hit and will take stress, everyone has on their character sheet 2 boxes. One has a 4 in it, the other one has a 6. 4 is called in peril. You can mark that box to mitigate 4 shifts of stress coming at you, right? But then you write a little aspect explaining how you are physically or mentally in peril. If you mark doomed, you can mitigate 6 shifts of stress coming at you, and then you write an aspect, about how you are physically or mentally doomed. There are ways to recover those. For the purposes of this game, if you mark doomed, it will not get unmarked until long after this campaign will have ended.
Yeah.
Because it takes a full story arc to recover that one. In peril can probably be recovered one session to another if you take the appropriate narrative stuff. At the end of a conflict scene, all your stress boxes just get cleared off. So in peril and doomed are the only things that linger with you. And if doomed is marked, death is on the table for your character to be taken out of a conflict. If you are taken out of a conflict, your enemy says what happens to your character. If at any point in time before you roll the dice, like for a defend action, you can choose to concede the conflict. You take yourself out. So you leave on your terms.
Nice.
And you get some bonuses, like if in peril is marked, you get a fate point for conceding. So that's a quick rundown of attack and defense. If it comes up, we'll deal with it in more detail then. And the last thing you can do is create an advantage. And that is to make a narrative detail in the form of an aspect that can help you or your allies later. Basically, like if you are going to go shopping for weapons or equipment in D&D ahead of time, you can just say, I negotiate with the merchant and I have you, and you tell your approach. I set the difficulty, you roll, you've created an advantage that is called goods and supplies, right? And we put a fate point on that, or 2 if you did really well. And then you can use those as free invocations whenever your goods and supplies help you out.
Cool.
Or it can be more direct, like, I'm going to light the field of battle on fire. Right? So any narrative advantage you can think of that creates a tangible change in the world, that's a created advantage. Cool. And I will suggest those things as they come up as well. Does that quick and dirty rundown help?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sound clear enough that we can proceed with play?
Yeah. So we have 9 stress before we start.
You should have 6.
6. Oh, okay.
Yes, 6 stress boxes. They're on the character sheets. If you're on the PDF, you can just drop all the way to the end and glance at the character sheet to see your stress boxes. And I'm going to trust you to keep track of those. I'm not going to be concerned about trying to track them myself. We need to know if in peril or doomed are marked, and you need to know when your conditions are marked.
Cool.
And that's about all we have to directly worry about. So. The day has dawned cold and crisp. I think it is in keeping with what we talked about, that we are still in the Southlands here. So the warmest, most temperate part of Midgard. Mm-hmm. I feel like Aevilheimr is not along one of the 9 major rivers that runs through Midgard, because it's a relatively recently settled Holdfast as such things go. That doesn't mean it's not near a body of water and that you can't, jet forth on your longships, but it's not on one of the rivers.
Right.
So a cold and crisp morning in Aevilheimr means for us American audiences that it's about 60 degrees in the morning.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, right. It's enough that there is a low fog rolling over the hills that surround the Holdfast. And as the morning breaks and as the Holdfast begins to stir to life, I would each of you to tell me where you are as the sun crests the horizon and what you are doing. Adira, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, Riina doesn't really sleep that often. She sleeps a few times a month usually. Last night she did not sleep. She went and ended up now as the sun is rising. She's found herself climbing to just the one of the tallest points nearby the Holdfast. Up a hill or like towards the side of a mountain or something, and is just sort of like wrapped in a cloak and feeling the warmth.
So, yeah, I think this highest point is an abandoned Petruvian watchtower. The Petruvian Empire is a Roman Empire analog, and along the southern border of Midgard, territory has changed hands a number of times over generations as the empire has attempted to expand northward and has been rebuffed by the peoples of Midgard. And so this watchtower is on top of a hill, and it has a commanding view of everything. And one of the major 9 rivers you can see off in the distance, and you can see the flash of the sun sort of glittering across its surface, though it is miles distant from where you are. And how does Bazakhor speak to you in your head?
Bazakhor's voice sounds like 2 pieces of wood scraping against each other.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's like deeper than that, and it's got all of these different layers and like rustling of leaves. It always sounds like Bazakhor's voice is coming from sort of right behind her shoulder.
Okay. So I'm going to get close to the mic to speak as Bazakhor, and you all tell me if it sucks.
Okay.
What did we come here to see?
The sun.
The sun is always. The sun. Why? We see the sun every day.
I wanted to see the sun today.
What makes this day different from the day before, or the day that will come tomorrow?
I wasn't on a watchtower then.
So Bazakhor is silent for a few moments, just sort of considering this. And as much as Bazakhor can be, you get this odd feeling of restlessness because Bazakhor has was a tree long before you came along. And sun and wind and water are all part of Bazakhor's existence.
Yeah.
So the context of when those things are happening is like skittering across. What pronouns do you want to use for Bazakhor?
Let's use they them.
They them are skittering across their mind like a droplet of water on a hot griddle, right? It's just not sticking. And I'm actually going to offer you a compel for Bazakhor's hold living heat, worldly desire. Yeah. If you accept, you can just go to the character slide and you can copy one of those fate points and paste it down so you have another one. But Bazakhor, without even words, do you accept the compel?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bazakhor wants to do something dynamic, wants to feel something more than they're used to feeling. So Bazakhor, you can feel the energies that represent the tree when you don't have the tree summoned, sort of coursing through your body. It's slow and almost congealing like sap, but the movement is relentless.
Yeah.
Right. And you find you don't have to make a text box to do that. You can just double click on the object and drop a character in.
Oh, okay.
You find yourself moving almost inexorably toward the Holdfast that you are here to do negotiations with. And Bazakhor doesn't know people that well. Like, much like trees in a forest are all the same when we look at them.
People are all the same.
People just, especially humans, right? Bazakhor can tell elf from elf, but humans, you know. So Bazakhor propels you towards the one human that they know, and that's Luhrin, right? Because Ogetti is, you've talked to Ogetti a number of times. Bazakhor knows, okay, sure, they're going to help, but Luhrin has power. Like, Bazakhor can feel the thrumming off of their leaves and bark. So you find yourself just going in that direction. And to provide a little bit of context for those listening, a compel usually means that it's not a great idea. So, Luhrin, where are you? What are you doing? And why would it be a really bad idea for Riina and Bazakhor to be approaching you right now?
I think that Luhrin has not yet figured out how to sleep through a night without like bleeding into his bed and making a mess, like from his side wound. Like, there's just, he wakes up before dawn every day, and you know, no matter how, he's still figuring out how to bandage it best, and like he's always bled out onto his palate a bit. So he's currently in the middle of dealing with that, kind of tending to himself and trying to figure out. I think, let's see. So he was an apprentice to the blacksmith. I wonder if he like lives like adjacent to the smithy or something along those lines.
Yeah, I would say that the blacksmith's apprentice had quarters within the smithy before, but when the mantle of seer sort of fell upon you, I think the blacksmith, who we will name Hrolf.
It's a good blacksmith name.
Yeah. I think they knew that you couldn't be an apprentice anymore.
Yeah.
You had to leave the smithy, but also that you had no place to go. So Hrolf moved out of their own house into the apprentice quarters, into your old bunk, and gave the seer, not Luhrin, the seer, the courtesy of using their own bed, their own house, and you have been bleeding onto Hrolf's bed every single night for the last how long ago did you get your mantle?
Let's put it like 3 months ago or something. So it's not like he's still very untested at it, but it's not like a shock anymore, you know.
Right. And it's also getting to the point where, just as a person and in the world, and how hospitality can get strained, like, you can tell Rolf's not saying anything, but you can tell that you're getting to the point where you need to figure some shit out and find your own place. And there you are. What does it look like when you are trying to clean up after yet another pool of blood on your bed?
Yeah.
He's I think, I mean, it would have had enough practice that he has this down to, some level of expectation. So he probably had some extra, cloth laid out or something, and is dealing with that. And, maybe, you can see whatever the tick is underneath. I don't know how nice our holdfast beds are, but I imagine it's like a, cloth and straw kind of affair, or
yeah, cloth and straw.
So there's just like, as he's pulling back the extra layers of sheets, there's just like a sort of a series of blotches of progressively lightening as he's like stained and restained and tried to wash out this tick.
So Riina, you're coming to the place where you know that Luhrin lives, and you feel Bazakhor shift inside of you, like wanting to come to the fore, like wanting to be present in the world.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and if you were going to use one of your approaches to sort of pick up on why this was happening, which approach would you use?
I think that Riina would use her guile.
Okay.
Since her relationship with Bazakhor is one of sort of like pushing and pulling, sort of between themselves.
Okay, so the Bazakhor is not being subtle about this, so your difficulty is going to be a 2.
Okay.
So for those listening, she's going to roll her dice and add her guile rating.
It's always 4 dice. Is that true?
Always 4 dice. Yes, we're 4 dice from here on out.
I got a 0 on the dice, but I got a 2 in guile. So.
Okay, so that is success at a minor cost. I am going to say that you definitely divine what Bazakhor's intention is, but you don't divine it quickly enough to stop your hand just wrenching open the door to Luhrin's house without knocking.
Yeah.
So Bazakhor is sensing the blood that is being sopped up in the rags Luhrin is using to clean up his mattress. And Luhrin, you've noticed this too. The blood that comes from this wound is not like if you get a cut on your arm. Like regular blood begins to cool and congeal. This blood will begin to congeal, but it does not cool at the same rate.
Oof, nice.
And Riina, Bazakhor is seeking to hold living heat. And what has more heat and life in it for a human than blood? So you get that intention, and then your arm reaches out and wrenches the door open. And Luhrin, your door behind you opens up.
Yeah, I think Luhrin is like probably only has bandages like from the waist up. I don't think he's wearing a shirt as he's cleaning this up, and he kind of stiffens and jumps up. Riina, can I help you?
Can I help you? You seem to have made a mess.
Yes. Once again, I don't think I need help. Thank you very much, though. I am getting quite good at this particular task.
It's right there.
Are you sure?
Why have we stopped?
I do appreciate your offer. But I think this is something I need to come to terms with for myself.
Take the rags from that one.
Well, perhaps I could at least throw out that trash for you.
Sure. Thank you very much again, Riina. You certainly don't need to do that if you wish.
Happy to help. And Riina reaches out to grab some of the garbagey, blood-stained rags and trash and like straw, and heads outside and holds it closely.
Uh,
Yeah, so the door shuts behind Riina, Luhrin, and that was weird.
but elves.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, again, but elves. And Ogetti, where are you and what are you doing?
I'm just kind of coming out. It's morning, so I'm coming out of the skald's hearth,
Mhm.
kind of stretching and kind of wrapping my cloak around myself and looking around and feeling like it's a good morning and just kind of keeping my eyes on what's going on. Check out the place, make sure the whole thing is secure. There's not anybody not doing what they're supposed to do around.
Yeah, so the Scald's Hearth is a middling sized longhouse that was built outside the confines of the Holdfast walls, much to the chagrin of the Jarl, who I believe battled for a while to try and keep it within the walls because it's much safer that way.
Mhm.
And I think in any dealings that you've had with the Jarl at this point in time, there's a sense of smugness on her part because she was right. Like the last time the dwarves rolled through is when all of this death happened, and when Bronwyn died. Y'all, I guess, are just lucky that they didn't have a dwarven destroyer with them somehow, because it could have been much, much worse. This is the refrain that you hear from the Jarl on a regular basis. So as you look over this land, this is the ground where the battle happened between the um, the Scald's Hearth and the Holdfast itself. It's a good morning, yes, but what other thoughts are running through your mind as you see that spot, that one spot?
Well, as I look across where all this took place, I feel, kind of a sense of determination and a sense of loss and um, kind of a feeling that, of like, this will never happen again. I'll do whatever I can. And that I don't think that the Jarl I think that the Jarl is too overconfident and we're in this mess because of too much confidence. And sure, this worked this time, but what about next time? And,
Right.
So if this all happens again, it's going to be less and less that we're going to be able to do our duty. So, so I'm kind of like always, lots of, vigilance and looking over and trying to replay the whole thing in my mind to think about how, what was it we could have done to prevent this tragedy?
Those thoughts are bouncing back and forth through your mind, and as you're just sort of staring at the battlefield, you feel a hand on your left shoulder.
All right, I kind of turned to look with a, startled, like I wasn't, I was so into myself that I wasn't really paying attention.
Standing behind you is Sejun, who is the head of the Sparrow clan and also the leader of the Scald's Hearth. And he has caught you at this sort of reverie before. He sort of squeezes your shoulder a little bit and says, thinking deep thoughts this morning, I see. I coughed as I approached and even stepped on a stick, but you didn't hear me.
Yeah, as always. Trying to think what, how everything could happen and how could I let that happen?
Our fate is what we make it. Whatever choices we make in a moment are often the only choices we feel like we can make in a given moment. To dwell on that is a self-poison I wish upon no one. As I see it now, you have two choices ahead of you. You can continue to dwell on the past and the actions that are already cemented in stone, or you can do something about the future that is standing before our Holdfast. Tonight's the night. The dead is to be called in. Hell's due is yet to come, and the Jarl does nothing. The elves are even here.
Yeah.
So, are
Well,
you going to stand here and stew, or are you going to do something about it?
I'm going to do something, but I don't know if what we need to do is going to be good for the hold or good for us as a people or how that's going to play out. There's decisions that were made before that shouldn't be made again. So it's just determining how can I protect you and the others, but how do we protect everyone too at the same time?
No one can protect everyone. I know enough stories to know that.
Well, that's true. By doing things that I don't want to do that I need to do, do I risk the entire thing coming down on our heads?
I am just a simple storyteller. You know that's not true, but these are not questions I can answer. If you seek guidance, if you seek some measure of clarity for the choices that lie ahead, well, the seer in town is new, but I'm sure he can cast the bones.
True. Well, I'll definitely need to talk to him and hope he's up for the task too.
We all had better be. I don't fancy seeing the dead and buried and burned come back to life.
No, definitely not.
My Aunt Helga was a piece of work. I have no wish to see her again, living or dead.
Yeah.
And he sort of like companionably claps you on the back and heads away. What do you do?
I'm just going to look, kind of thoughtfully at their back, and then look back on the, the grounds, and then I'm gonna kind of shrug my shoulders and figure why not go find the seer.
Okay. At the speed of plot, you end up approaching the seer's house in the Holdfast, just a little bit after Riina has exited. You've recognized her. You've seen her around. She's one of the elven envoys who's been assigned to your Holdfast. You're relatively sure she's one of the ones who can summon a tree, but I'm not sure you've ever seen her do it.
Yep.
But she's carrying or holding a bundle of rags that are dark colored, and as you get closer, you can see that they're soaked in blood. And she's just sort of cradling it by her cheek, and the red is sort of smearing onto her skin. And you would swear that it's getting absorbed somehow as you're walking up.
As the gods say, things, some things we're not meant to know, and whatever things that the elves have, oh well, I'll just kind of nod my head and carry on.
Ogetti.
I'm just gonna keep carrying on. Just gonna shake my head. It's like, okay, these elves, whatever it is.
Test.
Ogetti, I'm gonna give you a fate point
Okay.
For that, that's kind of what I would call a self-compel. You're working with Riina to fulfill your duty. It's not your job to ask questions about the creepy shit elves do. So
I'm like, okay. It's elf shit. Oh no.
yeah. So you now have an extra fate point for that. So because people are starting to stare, like people around the Holdfast, things are getting going. It's the morning, and activity is starting to take place, and people are selling their goods and eating breakfast. And there is an elf crouched outside of the blacksmith shop, rubbing bloody rags onto her face. And like people watch you approach and just like treat it like that. That's another day, another elf.
Fantastic.
No, you kind of got to keep them around.
So do you just leave the bloody ragged elf outside the blacksmith shop and head in? Or?
Yeah, I'm just gonna carry on. It's like I know I have to work with them to, whatever we're gonna do, but whatever the elves do, and I don't need to get involved. I got enough on my head.
Okay. How do you approach the blacksmith shop or the seer's home? As people have taken to calling it.
Seer's home. So I'm gonna just kind of approach and knock on the door, and
Yeah, I think Luhrin would be there, within a moment, kind of like pulling, kind of a very open, loose, upper garment, kind of over his head as he opens the door up. Runebear, can I help you?
Yeah. How are you?
I am learning to work with the strictures of the role that has fallen upon me.
Have the gods thumped you on the head yet?
Not the head. Just kind of like leans, and I imagine it's a known thing that this is the mark of the seer.
Mm-hmm. And it takes different forms. You got like the messiest one.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be a secret to the town at this point. Like that's
no, not at all.
Yeah. Then can I invite you in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would be lovely.
Go poke at the fire and kind of get it stirred up, and I don't know. Too early for mead? Maybe, I don't know.
Never too early for mead. So I thank you for inviting me in. I have many things on my mind. I just saw the elf coming from here.
Riina?
Yeah, Riina. I know that I've got to do more work with the elves and with Riina in particular. But it was odd seeing them carry around those bloody rags. So hence I was making sure that it wasn't anything more than usually the gods' touches on you.
No, she offered to dispose of them for me.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. We definitely don't need the bad scavengers to come around.
I thought it was below her station, but it seems to make her happy to be able to help. So,
well, I don't think the elves really have the same kind of family ranks and that we do. So it's kind of hard to say. But they are here to help us, as we are here to help them.
Yes.
So as long as that's okay, I'm okay.
So a quick question: you made mention, or the skald made mention that today is the day it comes due. Is that like common knowledge as well? Would be to this group at least.
Yeah, it would be to everyone involved in this would know, because as the seer, the Jarl often comes to you for advice, and so there's supposed to be a council tonight where the head of the delegations from the elves, the head of the skalds, all the heads of the warrior clans, yourself, the Jarl. Basically, it's a thing, which is an Old Norse term for a meeting or gathering. And this one is being called amongst the town the Hell Thing. because it's the meeting about hell.
Sure, yeah.
And
Oh, the old
so
hell thing.
yeah, so it's going to happen in the mead hall in the center of town. It's basically it's one of those events where certain people are supposed to be there, but the mead hall is a public place. It's kind of hard to like shut people out. So there's
Right.
going to be a big ass town gathering tonight to find out whether or not a god is going to curse you.
And do we know what we need to do, like what the mechanism is to prevent the curse? I don't know that we've defined that yet.
So I have an idea of what it is. The common belief is that the Jarl knows what it is, and that Jarl Grunleaf is not willing to do it. That is what is actually known. No one has been able to prise out from her what is actually needed to fulfill the bargain with hell.
Okay. Is that a thing I can I could have divined in the past?
It is something that given the so we can do this one of two ways. I can have you spend a fate point for information you would otherwise not be privy to, and we can couch that in magical seer-like visions. You can have not known it up until now, but you can, as part of whatever Ogetti is about to ask for, discover that information pending the success of a roll.
Yeah,
I think those are the two options that I like the most.
Okay, let's not spend the fate point yet. Let's just let it come up naturally. I wasn't sure how how couched in the information was. So, yeah. So, yes, I feel it loose ends. I feel like I ought to be doing something to prepare for tonight. But
that's definitely a feeling I hold. I have many concerns. And of course, none of this brings back good memories of our recent troubles with, losing the young skald, and also in the new position that you're in. And I really feel that the Jarl is, I don't know how well she wants us all to really work together and what it is that she's trying to hide from us, because we should know that through the generations that the Jarl should know what it is that we need to do to make sure that we appease hell. So I don't know if you have done any rituals yet, or if you've thought about it, or if the gods are speaking to you. But I have a concern.
I'm concerned as well, and I had hoped that the Jarl would confide in me, but she keeps her own counsel on this. I had taken it to mind to, seek the counsel of the goddess herself and see if I could discover it, but
Do you think that maybe this past bargain with the elves, that they might know a little bit more than they're letting on?
That certainly seems possible, but I haven't been able to gain too much information from my interactions with them yet. Maybe you've fared better.
And as an aside, Riina, you can sort of come back to yourself at any point in time now. I think that whenever that feels appropriate to you, the side of the rags that had been pressed up against your face and where your hands are on them, all of the blood that was on those rags has been completely absorbed by you, or by Bazakhor, to be more accurate, to the point that the rags are completely, like, there's not even a stain of blood. Like, whatever their original state was before Luhrin used them, that's what they look like now.
Nice.
With like outlines of blood where your hands were and where your face was.
Very cool.
Yeah.
you also notice that the humans are stopping and staring and like walking well around you whenever this awareness returns to your person.
Yeah, probably after like the second human that's doing that, Riina would be like, I should really stop.
Mm-hmm.
Wacky elf shit.
This was good. This
I'm
was very good. Thank you. And you feel one of those splinters inside sort of ease. Like you become so used to it now. It was almost like muscles that had been tense for so long you didn't realize they could relax. And then one relaxes.
Very cool.
Yeah, so Riina will get up, head over to the nearest fire.
Mm-hmm. The nearest fire is right behind you in the blacksmith's house. I will also say that I think it's undefined as to what elves actually can do. I think at this distance, you can clearly hear what the conversation is going on inside the house. And I would say that it would be fine for it to coincide with Luhrin saying, I haven't gleaned much from my interactions with the elves. I wonder if you would fare differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Riina will sort of be listening in and begin to dig a hole to bury the rags in.
Okay.
Right.
That's a matter of moments.
Yeah.
So back in the house.
I don't know if you've fared any better.
Not as of yet. Much has been on my mind, but as I have been reminded that I should stop looking behind and start looking forward. So it is on, it's definitely a part of my mind to make sure exactly how the elves are supposed to help, what it is that we can do to facilitate this, and any kind of knowledge they have about our task. Because they're not, obviously they don't want us to fail, but what does it mean when we have their support? What it is exactly that they plan to do? So there's a lot of unspoken things, and the Jarl is not being forthcoming in any information at all. So it should be kind of a feisty evening, but I am hoping that maybe between you, the elves, and with the other skald on our side, that we might be able to get some sense going on in this thing tonight.
Well, if it was a simple problem, I'm sure our ancestors would have solved it. So, don't know that looking within the Holdfast is going to yield any answers. I think you make a good point, friend. I think talking to the elves and seeing if we can learn anything from them is probably the best course.
At that point, there's a knock on your door.
Sure. Yeah, Luhrin would go over and open it. It's like, Riina, thank you.
I knocked this time.
You did. Thank you. Riina, I believe you know Ogetti.
Yes.
It's good to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
We were just discussing the thing tonight, and
just the health thing.
The health thing.
The health thing. And how little knowledge we have going into it. Do you mind if I ask? You are part of the elves that are here to see that we enforce the bargain. Do you have the details of the compact? Do you know what needs to happen to see our end satisfied?
I do not know all of the details, but I might give me one moment. And Riina sort of like turns her head slightly over one shoulder. And you hear her say, "Do you know?" As she is speaking to Bazakhor to use her stunt Knowledge of the Ages.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So I need you to roll with Guile. The difficulty is going to be a 4. This is a challenging thing to unearth.
I got a 5 total.
5.
Whoa,
All right.
nice.
So that is a standard success. Do you wish to take that up any higher and make it a success with style?
Ooh.
That would happen at 6?
Yeah.
It would happen at 7 because it's 3 above the difficulty.
Right.
So all Riina would need to do is spend 1 fate point and invoke 1 aspect to add +2 to the roll.
Yeah.
And that would get it there.
Riina will spend a fate point and invoke the aspect of my mother's stone seal.
Wonderful.
Nice.
All right, so we'll clear that fate point off of your sheet then. And so what you gain from Bazakhor, let's see. I'm gonna see if I can do this in character voice, and if I can't, I'll back off and just info dump. Let's see. The Mother Hunter was too powerful. Even the elves could not control her. And so a deal was made. A bargain struck with a goddess not your own. The Mother Hunter was sealed away until such a time as the dampening influence of that goddess could tame her. At the same time, that power needed to go somewhere. And Hell made another deal with the humans. Someone to contain that power. Someone to be Hell's messenger on this world. And their leader refuses. So there's a lot of implication that comes with that I can't convey via direct narrative. So the idea that you get in human terms is that the bit with the elves and the Mother Huntress being sealed away, that all makes sense to you. Although it is probably painful because that's your mom.
Yeah.
The human bit, though, you get the implication that Hell had to do something with this power that was leached or taken from the Mother Huntress, and it was to be imbued in a human. A human would call that person a priest. And so the result of the bargain is that Hell seeks a high priest in the world. And the Jarl is supposed to be the person to become that priest and receive Hell's blessing. Because only the person who has the mantle of leadership in the Holdfast, like that was because I think in this Holdfast, mantles and traditions being passed from person to person, regardless of what that person wants, is kind of a thing, right, with the seer and so forth. So whoever has the mantle of Jarl is bound by this oath
To become
to become the high priest. And even 3 generations removed, because Jarlship is not a familial line sort of thing.
It's duty, right?
Yeah, it's duty, or it's voted upon by the people, or blood combat, however a group decides to do it. But with the mantle comes this power, and you're far enough removed that people were like, oh, hey, yeah, like was mentioned, Ragnarok, whatever, no big deal. And then Ragnarok fucking happened in the middle of Jarl Grunleaf's reign, because she's been Jarl for a while. So now she has to do this thing, and she's not doing it. And if she doesn't do it tonight, then the restless dead of Hell will begin to rise, because there's no high priestess to contain them.
All right. So this is how Riina would explain this to the two of you.
Huzzah!
We're playing plot telephone.
Riina would probably have a little more like branch terminology and like Hell wishes to embrace the Jarl, and like wrapped close to her, and talking about like tree stuff.
I don't know if I understand. Hell wishes to praise the Jarl, like requires the Jarl's death.
No, requires the Jarl's service as a vessel and as a walker among the world, to spread Hell's seeds and branches throughout the world.
So as a priest, as to speak, which would have implications on this, because then they would lose their power. Would they lose their power as Jarl? Or
I do not know how your society works.
I can tell you outside of game, Ogetti, you would know, oh yes, people are only allowed to have one mantle of power at a time. Okay. That's a Midgardian thing, right? That's why there are no bone bonded or rune scribed Jarls.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe it is that she doesn't want to give up her power. Especially with her, she's built a family and all this stuff. Maybe she doesn't want this to turn into a place for Hell's worshippers to hang out, to turn this into a religious sanctuary. It's hard to tell, but she needs to do what she needs to do, and we need to make sure she does it.
Should she not just resign her position and then resume it once the high priest is chosen?
I
don't think Hell will let her, but it's up to Hell, really. As long as she, if she stands up for Hell and does Hell's bidding for what is required, what we promised generations ago. It's hard to say. Is she afraid? Which is shameful, and why Hell would want her if she was afraid.
I must say I'm sympathetic. I think that it can be a great burden to have your life altered thus. I think if we could find someone who is a willing servant of Hell instead of one serving out of obligation, that might best serve the interest of our Holdfast and the goddess.
Luhrin, there's a knock upon your door.
Okay. As he's headed over. Very popular this morning. Open the door wide.
The Jarl is standing before you.
Oh.
Jarl Grunleaf is a taller woman. She stands about 5'11". She has close cropped blonde hair, and she's a capable warrior. She has a noticeable scar across her right cheek that she sustained in battle, and she's led the Holdfast relatively capably these last few years. But anything that has been mentioned around her that references the entire reason the Holdfast can exist, which is this bargain with Hell, she immediately just shuts down and will not discuss it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since Ragnarok. There was this oath that she had to take when she became Jarl that involved adhering to the promise of our ancestors. And she swore it, blood oath, just like you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And now she won't talk about it. You look at her and it looks like she hasn't slept for 2 or 3 days. And unlike your elven friend, that actually means something for her.
Great.
She stands there and she sort of looks at the other two of you who are inside, kind of dimly illuminated by the fire that's going. She says, I'm afraid I would normally say I could return later. However, she looks sort of straight up at you and makes eye contact with you, Luhrin. She says, I don't know what to do. and I need the guidance of my seer.
Please come in. Do you mind keeping counsel with?
When you say come in and you're like trying to be solicitous of her, she just walks in and sort of plops down on a stool.
Sure.
And just sits there.
I think Luhrin definitely isn't used to being on equal footing with the Jarl yet. Like he
right.
still has the inclination to kind of like, cow and whatnot. So he's not standing up at all, in her presence.
Right. And when the Jarls come to you before, she's always come seeking a casting of the runes, a divination of the future. We can do this. We can do a few different things here. I have a bag of rune stones sitting like within arm's reach right now.
Sure.
I can actually cast the runes and you can read them if you would like to. If Luhrin has something more in mind, you can always use a word in the right ear and just tell the Jarl what to do.
Yeah.
It depends on how brazen you're feeling. Like, do you trust fate to guide the Jarl, or are you going to take fate into your own hands? Because that's kind of what seers do.
Yeah, no, I think even though she didn't explicitly ask for it, I think he was already headed for the runes as soon as she, had made herself at home.
Okay.
Just assuming that's what she was looking for.
Yeah. She's always sat in the same spot. Like, you've done this. I'd say this is probably the fourth time she's come to you. So it's enough familiarity that you get it. You know what's going on, regardless of your overall comfort level. And I'm going to award you a fate point for that, based on your self-conscious trouble, because. Not because it is definitely a bad decision here, but you are literally not doing a thing a seer could do, and you are leaving this to fate.
Yeah.
So you don't know what's going to happen, and taking that chance as someone who wears the mantle of seer is always a risk.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you are cool with it, I'm going to grab my bag of rune stones, and I am going to pull out 3 runes, and I'm going to... I'm not going to toss them and cast them, but I will shake the bag up. I'll pull them out and I will reveal them into the palm of my hand. And I'll do the same way I do readings myself. I'll just flip any over right to left so the faces can be viewed. And then I will pull my camera down so everyone can see what the runes actually are.
Cool.
Sound good?
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds great.
All right. So.
That's such a satisfying sound.
1, 2, 3. I didn't have to flip any over.
Oh, nice.
So, get them on camera there. So these are all upside down to you, but as I read them, we have the one that is on the bottom for you is Sowilo, which is the rune of life and health. It is slightly canted, but not completely in its Merkstave form, which means sort of the opposite of the reading, like a reverse tarot card.
Right.
So it is partially occluded. Next down, this one right here is Iwaz, which is tree, life, and growth.
Nice.
Which is completely upright, so has its own meaning. And then this one here is Kanaz, which is light or illumination, but it's in its Merkstave orientation, which means that it is backwards from how it normally faces.
Hold them up for one more second. I almost got
sure.
you to there's the zoom for the chat. Will you point out which one's which again real quick?
Sowilo is right here, the lowest. That is the life and health, but it's partially occluded. Iwaz is tree, life, and growth, and that is in its regular form. And then Kanaz right down here is in its Merkstave form. and this is as I'm looking at it. So
Sure.
it would be 180 for y'all.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the way, as those runes fall, the way that you can interpret that is that there is life and health to be had. The path to it is not immediately apparent, save that a branch of the tree is reaching out to connect it to everything else. If you follow that branch, though, I should say, if you ignore that branch that's reaching out at the top of Iwaz and you look toward the bottom where Kanaz is in its Merkstave, all you will find is darkness. So to attain life and health, you must follow the tree.
Hey.
Excellent. So I'm not going to completely rehash that just for,
Sure.
not doing it justice sake.
Yeah,
But
you're not going to say that to an NPC that's being controlled by me, so I can respond as the NPC.
Yeah. But Luhrin gives a version of that to to the room at large, and then we'll kind of like contemplate it, for a moment and say, I think, my Jarl, that we may need to seek the counsel of the elves for direction. That's how I read the way these runes fall. I am happy to facilitate that discussion, but I am not get clear guidance so much as a direction to investigate.
The Jarl stands up from the stool, and she, for a brief moment, sort of stares into the fire, kind of unblinking. And then all of a sudden, her left foot lashes out and kicks the stool that she was sitting on directly into your fireplace. And she turns on you and simply says, "Fuck your guidance then." And leaves.
Yep.
And for anyone who happens to glance back at the fire, as the stool is burning up, the same runic symbols that were in the stones that Luhrin cast are present there, except that the tree is burning and life and health is charring along with it. And there is a pattern of char, because the stool didn't get completely in there, that is just scoring into the wood in the pattern of Kanaz in its Merkstave.
I don't know that we're going to be able to go directly through the Jarl for this.
And as this is our first session, I feel that right there might be an appropriate stopping point for the evening to let the story simmer.
Cool. Yeah, I dig it.
And then we can convene next week and see where this goes. But before we sign off, I love debriefs. So if y'all want to talk a little bit about how things are going, where you want to see things go, what things you want to explore, that'll help me make sure that I give everyone the game that they want to have.
Cool.
So Danacia, let's start with you. How are things feeling for you?
Pretty good so far. I think there's going to be more politics in this than she likes, which is fine. Is that because that's kind of part of that simmering anger is a hatred of politics, because it's all about, part of my, the stunt that I'm going to use probably a lot is I live to serve, but who am I really serving?
Right.
As we go on. So that's kind of where I'm going with that is, it's like, I'm kind of beholden to the skalds, and then there's, hell, and then there's the whole there. So, I'm kind of liking that there's going to have to be choices. I think that we're all going to have a lot of choices of what we're going to have to do moving forward.
Yeah, and the delicious part for me is the skalds have nothing to do with this hell prophecy.
Right.
They're just there. Like, and you're being dragged into this because you chose to help them out, and you've got this responsibility that has nothing to do with the Jarl's decision. Like, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Ian, what are you thinking?
I don't know. I like this. It's interesting. I think I'm looking forward to seeing. I want to see what's going on with the rest of the elves. I'm intrigued by the city and the outpost, and I kind of like the direction that we're going to go. Spend some time on Riina's home turf. I think that'll be really interesting. But yeah, I'm digging this. Feels good.
Cool. And Adira, how are you feeling?
I got to do weird elf shit, and so that was fun. I wanna you mentioned like goals. I would love an opportunity to like summon Bazakhor.
Oh yeah.
And like go all big tree somewhere. But I'm in for this sort of weird like outsider politics that I'm doing right now, and that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So one of the sort of hallmarks of a one shot of Iron Edda is that there is a big fight at some point in time, where the bones get summoned and the runes get used and the seer is doing all kinds of wiggity stuff. That does not ever have to happen, but and I don't mind like sort of pulling back the curtain because we have a short game. We want to make sure we get all of our own personal story goals accomplished. I could easily see your journey to go speak with the elves being very much interrupted by a dwarven attack that has to be addressed and dealt with, not as like the tent pole of a session, but as a very big thing that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something everyone's interested in seeing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I definitely want to see combat at some point. I think that.
Awesome, because games that go really political can do that and have like maybe die roll social conflicts that function the same way, but it's not the epic summoning of the tree and so on and so forth. So I think you all can plan on that for next week.
Cool.
That there will be a big something going down, and then I would imagine that if the conversation with the elves doesn't happen next week, it will definitely happen in the finale, and that will lead into that night and how it goes. And I personally I will not plan how that's going to end. I am comfortable with that ending any way, shape, or form for this Holdfast, just depending on how things fall out.
Cool.
So if everyone's cool with that, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm excited for our like combination of combat stuff and politics stuff.
Yeah.
And elf weirdness.
Yes.
Elf weird shit.
Oh, and you better believe that the desert traders and their weapons are going to be factoring in at some point in time as well.
Nice.
Ooh, yeah, I want Cthulhu to show.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Ian, you can. Yeah, it's your stream, my friend.
Oh yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming out and for playing. Again, if I linked the drive through RPG page earlier. I didn't. I'll drop it in the chat again. This game's great. It's definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being willing to come and run it for us and show off your awesome work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we got another 2 weeks of this little mini campaign. Same time on Thursdays, the next 2 weeks. Yeah, and I also have like I said at the top, the culmination of the first 3-act play, where we have weird deacidal Nudibranch sea sluggy things that are going to be exploring the corpse of their slain god. It's going to be a good time.
Nice.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for coming out. Thanks, chat, for hanging out and chiming in. It's always fun to have people
Thank you, chat.
watching live.
Yeah, we appreciate all your comments. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will see you. I'll hopefully see some of you Saturday. I hope to see all of you back next week to watch where the story unfolds. Thanks so much.